Good evening, and welcome to this week's Waterside Chat. I'm here at Pillsbury Lake, as you can see behind me. I have parishioners who live on this lake, and I want to thank the Bucks for allowing me to be here tonight. Actually, one of my very first memories of being at Concordia is with Jennifer Buck. I came to meet with the church council so they can vote on whether or not I would be their pastor. After meeting, Jennifer invited me to go out with some other people and have a drink at a local restaurant. And I spent And so she was always so welcoming, and I spent actually quite a bit of time since I've been their pastor at Jennifer and Ernie's house, eating and sharing fellowship. And I'm thankful for all the ways they've been so kind to me and welcoming to me. What a gift they are. And so I'm so glad to be here tonight. Tonight, I actually want to talk about something that's an important part of Lutheran theological tradition, and that is the idea of paradox. The idea that two opposing things can be true at the same time. And here are just some of the examples of that from Lutheran theological tradition. Law and gospel, that we're Lord of all and servants of all, that it's already and not yet, that that God is perfectly just and perfectly merciful. Those are just a couple of examples. But the one I really want to talk about tonight is the idea that we're both sinner and saint at the same time. And I think we really struggle with this in our time. We struggle to understand how two opposing things can be true at the same time. See, we seem to live in a world of extremes. We live in a world of absolutes. We live in a world of my side versus your side, and my side is always right, just, and pure. I was thinking about this, especially on the 4th of July, because it seemed there were only two options given on that day. Either you love America and everything about it, or that you say everything about America is corrupt and no good. You either wear a flag shirt that shows your patriotism, or you reject the flag. And I think the world and American history is too complicated for those particular extremes, because the truth is both those things are true at the same time. America is great. Lots of ideas that shape the world, right? All men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The idea that people decide what happens to them by electing officials who serve the people. The idea that I'm free to worship God in my own way. I'm free to speak my mind even if it disagrees with who's ever in charge. All those are great ideals. And they were revolutionary for their time and for ours. But of course, not everything about America is great. There's lots of things about it that aren't so great. Our history is more complicated, right? It includes slavery and Jim Crow, the KKK, white supremacy, the killing and removal of indigenous people. It includes hatred, discrimination against women and LGBT community. It includes police brutality and unjust wars in far-off places. Why can't we acknowledge both? Both those things are true. They're contradictions. I read a great op-ed piece by one of the descendants of Thomas Jefferson, one of his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandsons. And he wrote about the removal of Jefferson's statue in Washington, suggesting that they should take it off because the true monument is in Monticello, where all the contradictions of Jefferson are fully shown. He wrote, Thomas Jefferson, during his lifetime, owned more than 600 slaves and had at least 6 children with one of them, Sally Hemings. It's a shrine to a man who famously wrote that all men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence that founded this nation, and yet never did much to make those words come true. Upon his death, he did not free the people he enslaved, other than the Hemings family, some of whom were his own children. He sold everyone else to pay off his debts. Thomas Jefferson, like all of the founding fathers, was a complicated man with contradictions and sins. This is why I find Luther's insight that we're all sinners and saints helpful. Because it's really true that within all of us, there are things about us that are really good, things about us that are not so good. And often those things are happening at the same time. My college chaplain used to say that his best qualities were also his worst. I think that there's truth in that. Luther's point in saying that we're all sinners and saints is that we cannot escape sin. It's part of what it means to be human. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but it happens to me all the time. I'll do something that I think is good, right? I'll be, for a moment, a good husband or a good dad or a good pastor or a good friend. And then usually within the next few minutes, I'll do something inexplicably bad. And quickly, it makes me think, man, I'm not that good a person. And all of us are impulses to do things that are selfish and mean. And that's only on an individual basis because we're all part of a larger system that swallows us up in the sins. We all have been programmed by society to think certain ways. We've all been brought up to see the world through certain lenses. And often they obscure us from seeing properly. We're all part of the world that can be hateful and violent and overly sexualized. But the great thing is that not all is lost. Because inside of all of us is also something wonderful and beautiful. Inside of us is goodness and acts of selfishness and love and caring. I've been blessed in my ministry over these 17 years to see so much goodness in people. Marveled about how people take care of each other. I've marveled at how people share God's gifts with each other and the world. I've marveled at how eager people are to serve others and make a difference. All those things flow from God's grace. And I also know that even in the world, there is goodness and beauty. I've seen it in the Black Lives Matter marches and rallies. I've seen it in neighbors serving neighbors. I've seen it in our state Senate here in New Hampshire as public servants do their best to work for all people. I've seen it in the way we come together when there's tragedy. I've seen it when we acknowledge our own shortcomings and vow to do better. We're all sinners and we're all saints. And often those things exist at the exact same time. And one reason that God's grace is so important is because it helps us to get through life humbly. It helps us to acknowledge that we don't know everything, and we need help to know what is just and merciful. We need help to act on behalf of other people. We need help to make the world better, and to know that we will ultimately fail, because all human systems are flawed because they are all human. I really do believe if we could just acknowledge this paradox, it would help us to deal better with each other. We wouldn't be so quick to judge each other, and we just might be willing to listen to one another. Thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you'll join us next week as we have another Waterside Chat. Until then, may God bless and keep you. Amen.